What is up, everybody? Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. We're not even going to talk about Alex Strofe for skipping another episode today because that guy, I don't know what we're going to do with that guy. But Perri Goldstein does show up every single time that we record, and she's the best and amazing. So Perri Goldstein, welcome back. How the heck are you doing?
I am good. We are joking. We love Alex. We miss Alex. But I'm very excited about this episode, Andy. This is going to be a fun one. This is one of the ones where we are going to get to look at this list at the end of the season and see who is right, which I love because I'm not a competitive person, but I'm competitive with Andy. So I love that when I'm right and you're not.
I'm very excited for this one as well. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going over players that have already built up some hype throughout the course of this offseason. And there are plenty of players that we could discuss in this category. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of just positive thoughts and vibes about players who are maybe bouncing back, players that are rookies, players that are free agent signings. There's just like, this is the time where everyone's hope is just through the roof. I think a lot of it is earned and deserved. We'll also go through one player at the end who maybe we're not quite buying the hype on. So we're going to go through that as well. And then we're going to kind of do this draft style for the players that we are buying the hype on. And we'll see who kind of has the best list at the end of things. Before we get there, just to kind of get us in the spirit of the all hype team, since we are doing players only on this one, and I don't usually like what I usually like to do is be like all hype team, and then Alex and Perri do like all players, and like, haha, gotcha, I'm doing Jeff Hafley or something like that. So I'm not going to do that this time. I have all players on my list, but yesterday, Perri, I talked about sort of at length how excited and hyped up I am for the Jeff Hafley era. So let me just ask you this. Are you buying or selling the hype on the Jeff Hafley era at this point, very, very early in the process?
At this point, I feel like you have to buy. Yeah. I mean, what's the point in not buying? They brought in a new guy. He's going to bring a new system. I think it feels the Jeff Hafley, I was about to say signing. They didn't sign him. Hiring. It feels very Matt LaFleur to me. Like when they brought in Matt, everyone was kind of like, huh? He was a young guy. He hadn't really called plays, but he came from like a really great scheme. And you kind of went, all right, we guess we are going to have to trust the process here. And obviously it worked out great. And yes, Matt has not had the best track record of hiring his coordinators, but this one feels different. It does. It's very off the beaten path. Jeff is young. He comes from college. Like I just think like so far from what the players have said, the vibe at camp, new training staff as well. It's hard not to buy in right now. All we have is like 2 OTAs, a rookie mini camp, and a bunch of interviews with Jeff. And so far, all signs point towards good change. Yeah. So yeah, I'm bought in. Obviously we're not really going to know if things are going well until about probably like week 4, because we're going to give him like a little leeway. But he's working with like amazing talent. So yeah, it's hard not to think that, you know, he's being set up for success.
Totally with you. Kind of a lot of the exact same things I said yesterday. Kind of joked. I'm sure somebody's already sitting on the Fire Hafley Twitter handle, and you know, like as soon as there's like one touchdown drive in the first game, everyone's gonna like, oh, well, here we go again, you know. But and also I know Jeff Hafley can't win anything in May and June. You know, there's just nothing that he can do to, you know, other than first impressions. But the first impression has been fantastic. It feels like there's another. You mentioned Matt LaFleur, which some reason remind me of McFlurry, but Matt LaFleur type signing. It feels like there's another Matt LaFleur, but on the defensive side of the ball. And like just the same vibe that like you kind of said that we got when the Packers hired Matt LaFleur as sort of obviously the head coach, but also the architect of this offense. It feels like they kind of now have their Matt LaFleur on the defensive side, and time will tell how that works out. But just the way his mind works in some of the press conferences, you can tell this isn't going to be a static defense that is doing the same things over and over. That's just like, this is who we are as a defense, and you're going to have to bend to our, like, it is we're going to do what we need to do, just like an offense would, to put together a scheme and a game plan and make the necessary adjustments and changes pregame, mid-game, all of it. This feels very thought out, and we're going to build this defense week in and week out to be what it needs to be for our specific opponent. And that's what really excites me. Like you said, they have the players to utilize that type of system. I thought Goody did a tremendous job of filling all the gaps with, like, it's still funny to me that Jeff Hafley literally like defined what his perfect safety is. And like Brian Gutekunst's like, haha, I know exactly the guy. I know exactly the guy. Let's go get that guy. And then like just grabbing a real true box safety that's a tight end coverage guy in Katano Ladapo, a different type of slot and safety type in Evan Williams, Javon Bullard, Edgerrin Cooper, Tyron Hopper, like just going through like everything to find every sort of versatile piece that Jeff Hafley could use. I'm with you. I'm buying. I couldn't be more excited. Can't wait to be disappointed again. Like I should learn my lesson by now, but I'm totally buying.
No need to be disappointed. At some point, it's going to have to work out, right?
Just like law of averages.
At some point. Yeah. Jeff Hafley really did say, fairy godmother, I want this. And Gutekunst waved his magic wand and said, here, Savior McKinney. I also just think like there's literally no point on June 2nd, which is when we're recording this, to not be buying stock because there hasn't been a single sign yet that there's anything negative. So,
and just the buy-in he's received from players, like I talked yesterday a little bit too of like that's worth its weight in gold. Like for a coordinator who's coming into a job who it's been a hot second since he's been a coordinator. He's been a head coach for the last handful of seasons, and to immediately come in and have players so excited to play in this defense already, and it 1,000,000% does not feel fake. It does not feel like, because like to some extent, like what are they supposed to say? Like, yeah, we'll wait and see. No, of course they're going to be positive.
You can tell though. You can tell, especially with players like Jaire, because like you can. There's some guys who are very like not coach speak, but you know what I mean, very like party line ish, and then there are guys like Jaire who they have their personality, and you can tell. And you could tell last season that he was very unhappy, and then he went and had his presser a few days ago, I think right after OTAs. First of all, he's shown up at voluntary workouts, which yes, you can talk about the, money that he's getting, but he didn't come last season. And he straight up said, this season is different. The new coaching staff, both defensively and from the training room, they're great. So you can't even be like plainer about it. So I think also to that point, when you're getting nearly 100% attendance from the roster, that says a lot too. Now, again, like it could just be, there's a lot of reasons why. It may not be a Jeff Hafley thing. It could be, I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, I think this team probably feels like, okay, look at what we just accomplished. Like if we put 100 in, like we can go all the way this season. And that starts right now. That starts with every practice, like every moment, every second we get together. But it can't not have something to do with a new defensive coordinator. Like I can't imagine that some of the defensive vets are not saying, hey, we're going to have a new scheme. We have a new playbook. We've got a new guy. We got to like come back together from a locker room perspective. Yeah, last season was not what we wanted. We were disappointed in ourselves. Maybe we're disappointed in the way we like held ourselves, personally. We have to do better. And that starts with our relationship with our defensive coordinator. And here's the time that we get with him. Like now we have to show up. Again, this is pure speculation, but just like if you have a new boss and you get like a voluntary week with them, you skip it, that says a lot. But if you show up to it and you develop that relationship, it's probably going to go a long way for how your relationship goes for the time that you work together.
No, you're spot on. And just one last thing before, because I want to get definitely to our all hype team here, but it's fun talking defense right now. You look at what this group did from really linebacker and back. The safety room is laughably improved. Like it is hilariously going from a group that I'll be honest, I thought overachieved based on the talent level that they had in the room to some extent, with Darnell Savage, Jonathan Owens, Rudy Ford, and that entire group. To go from that to Xavier McKinney and then adding a slew of guys and all the rookies that they added. And obviously you're hoping Anthony Johnson Jr. takes a little bit of a step from year 1 to year 2, or even better, a big step would be great. That room is remarkably better. Corner, I think we're all expecting Jaire to take another step, or even based on where he was a season ago, just bounce back in and hopefully get back to Pro Bowl or maybe even better caliber play, which is a big thing for the secondary, and getting Eric Stokes back, which they had for 2 games, who he was very clearly very rusty in those 2 games. Like, that's a big addition. It may not look like it on paper, like Jaire and Stokes were on the team, but I think the level that they'll be able to play at and bring from a season ago is totally different. Carrington Valentine should also take a step. And then at linebacker, like, yes, you lose to Devondre Campbell, but it was very clear Devondre had lost a little bit of a step, or maybe just the will in this defense, whatever it might be. Like, now you're getting guys like Tyron Hopper and Edgerrin Cooper, a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism in that group. It's hard to look at that group. And the front is the same. The edge and the interior defenders are the same, but like that group, linebackers, corner, safeties, and being like, how are you not better, especially with a system that seems much more tailor-made to those specific types of players?
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be like, I think part of me is like, it's going to be some big changes, but also it might also look very similar. Just hopefully the players are executing at a higher level because they fit the system they're in.
I think they will. And it may take a little bit of time. It may take a few games to sort of get their feet underneath them, but it's going to happen. I really believe so. Let's get to our all hype team. We're going to do this draft style. So we'll snake through it all. You'll do one because you're the best and you get to have the first overall pick. So you get number 1 and then I'll go 2, you'll go 2, and we'll kind of go back and forth by that until we fill our teams. 5 people each. Perri Goldstein, the floor is yours. Who is your first overall all hype pick?
Okay, so before we started recording, thought that maybe we would have our first pick be the same. So I'm curious if this guy is not, but we've already mentioned him a bunch. And I think the person that I am easily the most hyped for is Xavier McKinney. And I think he's going to exceed, or if not, at least meet expectations, because like, hello. Okay, do I need to go into it? I can go into it. I mean, first of all, he has been the best safety since he came into the league, since he was drafted, like literally rated by PFF. I would love to hear your grades on him too. He so far has come in and been, just as we were just discussing, like a consummate leader. We've talked about it on the show, right? He's not only like shown up for everything, but he's staying to watch practice film and then talking to the room about it afterwards. I mean, just like everything about him so far has absolutely like blown me out of the water. We naturally have not seen him play yet. So in Green Bay, that's fine. We've seen what he did on a Giants team that, like, let's be real, was not very good. Right. And he still was incredible. He does everything well. He's the most well-rounded safety that there is. He's going to fit so well in this scheme. I see no world where he isn't absolutely perfect in this team. And like, I don't even feel bad or scared about saying that out loud.
Yeah, he was number 2 on my list. And even just kind of saying that, I think he probably should have been number 1 on my list. And as you said before, you thought we were going to have the same guy. I'm excited about my other guy that I'll talk about in just a moment. But to your point, when you get that sort of perfect feel type of guy, and when you're going to spend that much in free agency on a player, it can't just be one thing. And when he brings that perfect safety, but also at that safety spot, somebody who can do a little of everything, the box safety, the post safety, he can play in the slot a little bit, whatever you need him to do, he can absolutely do. And then to have that influence on the safety room, on the corner room, on the defense as a whole, be somebody that, I don't know how they're going to do team captains this year, if it's going to be week by week like they did last year, or maybe they just do team cap. He's in that conversation. Like, either way, whether it's like a yearly captain or not, like, there are guys on this team that are clearly going to be captains, whether they're wearing the C or not. Like, he is a captain through and through, and is somebody that's going to lead this defense. We've talked about for a while, this defense needs an identity. They need a personality. And it just feels like he is going to help usher in this new defense, this new era, this Jeff Hafley system. And he's going to help be the guy that sort of brings this all together and is kind of the linchpin of this entire defense. And you need sometimes a guy like that. And sometimes it can be a Reggie White at defensive end, a Charles Woodson at corner. And I'm not necessarily saying that this is the Reggie White, Charles Woodson-esque version of, of Goody's big time signing, but he can be. I think he can be. I think he has everything that he needs to do. And he's going to be given every opportunity. He's going to be on the field every single snap. He's going to bring that energy, that leadership, that mentality. And oh, by the way, he's just a phenomenal football player too. I get every second of it.
I do think, to your point, though, that if this team does make a run, like, knock on wood, if this team this year, next year, the year after, if this team ends up making it to a Super Bowl, we will look back on this signing, I think, in that same category as Goody went for the swing. He went for the big player that every other team in the league wanted at a position of like high value, high need. And it made the difference. Like, I do think that in hindsight, we will see it that way if that does end up happening.
Easily could be the case. Number one on my list. I don't think a lot of people are going to have this as number one on their list, but if people have been watching, paying attention a little bit, they're not going to be super surprised by this name. I'm going Devonte Wyatt. I am going Devonte Wyatt. This is a player who I don't think people quite recognize. Was top 20. He was 20, but he was top 20 in the NFL in pressures as an interior defender a season ago. I don't think he gets anywhere near that type of credit. Now, to everyone's very clear and obvious, just vision of who he is as a player, he needs to finish some of those pressures and turn those pressures into sacks, force fumbles, or, hopefully even like throws that turn into interceptions. There's a lot of times where he's getting that pressure and then the quarterback is escaping. That's not just a Devonte Wyatt thing. Everyone else has to be getting pressured too, so that, there's not an escape lane for the quarterback to take off into. But he has the ability, and he showed it a season ago at an entirely different level than he did as a rookie. There are not many human beings that have his size and speed and athleticism and have shown legitimately at an NFL level that they can utilize it to be a disruptive force on the inside. Those are all great, but that's not necessarily the reason I'm buying it. The reason I'm buying it is he did all of that and is not a full-time player, which he's still going to probably see the same amount of rotational snaps as he did a season ago, but in a defense that was not a gap penetrating, get upfield and go attack style defense at all times, which by all accounts, this is the defense that's going to do that. This is a defense that is tailor-made on the interior defensive line at that 3 technique spot, made for a Devonte Wyatt style player. So I am unbelievably pumped and excited for what year 3 of Devonte Wyatt's going to look like. I want all the stock. I want every ounce of it. If anyone's selling, I am buying. Give me Devonte Wyatt. I am buying the hype. And he had 48 total pressures a season ago. And again, not a full, time snap load. He's going to get, I think, even more playing time. I think it's going to be a much different Devonte Wyatt that we see.
Great. I think we've all been kind of waiting for that like first round pick. He's flashed. Yep. Like when he's on the field, you notice it, and he's flashed, but he wasn't making the same like statistics. It doesn't show up on the stat line, right? In the same way that you would hope a first round pick did. And I think you're 100% right. I think that this scheme is going to be exactly what he needs. And we've been waiting, right, for that pair with Kenny Clark, that other half, that guy who can like come in and like really, take the double teams away, allow Kenny to eat and allow each other to eat, especially if Devonte is going to be like just as effective. I think it's going to make it all trickles back too, right? So I think it's going to be highly, highly effective. Highly. I'm very excited. I knew you were going to say that.
you know me too well. And yes, I cannot wait for the Devonte Wyatt season. And hopefully it is everything that we hope and expect it to be. All right. Since you took Xavier McKinney as one of my picks, I'm going to have to just take one here to steal one from you.
Oh gosh.
I think I've been harder on this player than I think maybe almost anyone else. And that's Jaire Alexander. Even 2 years ago, I know you too well as well. Even 2 years ago when he was, I think, a second team All-Pro, I didn't have him as highly graded and rated in that season as I think some other people did. I think over the last couple of years as a run defender, especially, we haven't necessarily seen the version of Jaire that I think we saw earlier in his career, where there was just a tenaciousness and a tenacity about him that we just all immediately fell in love with. I thought some of his raw coverage skills, especially this past season, weren't quite as much there as even they were, especially when he was like first team all pro. Listen, we all know the player that Jaire is capable of being. We all saw him, especially early in his career, that Rams game in his rookie year where he just basically shut down Brandon Cooks, and the rest was just kind of immediately there. But ever since that shoulder injury, I think we've seen a little bit of a different version of Jaire. And then last year you had the suspension issue. You had just, there's just a weird vibe to it. And I know some people are willing to chalk that up entirely to he was clearly not happy in the Joe Barry system, and there was differences. And his cornerbacks coach and Jerry Gray moved on, I think, because there were differences between Jerry Gray and Joe Barry. Like, and I'm sure he was probably on team Jerry Gray. Like the vibe was just off. But so in totality, I think that we haven't seen the same Jaire. And like I said, I think I've been harder on him. I am all in on everything that I've seen Jaire, not only in this offseason, but really post-suspension last year. And that could have gone in so many different directions. There are star players in this league, and Jaire is clearly a star player in this league, that you do something like that, you get that one game, you give any sort of suspension or something like that, especially when it's, he could have taken that in so many different ways. There are players that would have demanded trades. So I'm not playing for this team anymore, that would have shut down, that would have not listened to it. And for him as a person and as a player to take it constructively, to bounce back. And I think even last year, like that week after, you could see almost like he was afraid. He's like, you're not going to see the same Jaire Alexander. And I don't know, like you can see now, like it seems like he's found that balance that like, I can still be Jaire, but I have to also take care of business. And I am ready for business plus Jaire, and just hopefully, like he said, the number one corner in the NFL has entered the chat. I think the number one corner is back, and I cannot wait for the season of Jaire.
Yeah, I think you said it really nicely. I have a lot to say about this. He was obviously on my list as well. I think he's deserved of all of the hype because he's proved that he can live up to that hype. He was a second team all pro. And he's trying to make his way back to that form. We mentioned it earlier in the show when we were talking about the defense. He didn't jive with the previous regime on that side of the ball. It clearly affected him a little bit more than it did other people. That happens. He's a personality, and it's, I think, part of why we love him. I think it's part of why he's a great corner. I think that level of swag and tenacity and, quite frankly, arrogance you need in a corner.
Yep.
It translates onto the field. It also makes for sometimes a little bit of a difficult working style. But again, to our earlier point, he's shown up. He's completely taken accountability for all of his actions, and he's ready to move forward. And that's really all you can ask of really anyone at any point in your life, because people are human and they make mistakes. So what you do with those mistakes and how you move forward from them is really all that matters. And I just think his attitude so far shows me, and I agree with you 100%, is that we're going to get him back to his true form. On top of that, I think he's going to be put in hella position to do amazing things. And we have been saying for a long time, Jaire is an incredible boundary corner, but how fun would it be if he played the start position every once in a while?
Yep.
Do you want to move him off the boundary? Yeah, no, probably not. But if you get Eric Stokes back full go and he can play on the boundary with Carrington Valentine, then I feel great about moving Jaire in the middle. How fun would that be in certain games where that fits with the opponent? So I think Jeff being creative in that way is going to make the defense better. It's going to make Jaire better. I think Jaire is going to love it. We're going to see some really fun things from him this season. I also think the relationship he already has with Xavier McKinney is going to be really fruitful on the field. I think we're going to see that translate really well as well. When you trust your safeties on the back end, when they're your friends in real life, and also when you trust them on the field, so different. So different. I'm super hype, and this team is a different team when their stars are playing to their full potential. I think you and I talk about it a lot, actually, when the defense isn't playing well. Where are the playmakers, right? Yep. When Rashawn Gary's not getting the sacks, when Jaire's not playing himself, when he's not, he hasn't always been a big interception guy, but like when he's not making those big plays, it's like it's really noticeable because they haven't always had those big playmaking dudes. They hopefully have a few more now that they don't have to 100% rely on those two names that I just mentioned. But also it will go as the big stars go.
And hopefully your first round pick, Xavier McKinney, is a huge opportunity to make a lot of those plays as well, which is why it was your first round pick. But that brings us to your second and third picks. Who do you got, Perri Goldstein?
Okay, so I was worried you were going to take this guy when you said you've been low on him. So I'm curious where he falls on your list, but I'm still hype. The hype train has not left the station. I feel like you might disagree with me, but I'm still all in on year 2 of Jaden Reed. The hype is like way up. I know that he had a phenomenal rookie season and it's going to be really hard to top it. So that's why I think it's going to be tough, right? That like the hype is there because he produced. And I think it's very hard to go back out there after a rookie season that he had. I mean, what was it? 800 yards from scrimmage, 10 touchdowns, somewhere in that realm. I mean, that's high volume. I expect a big second year jump. Nothing that I've seen from him shows me that there's going to be any kind of sophomore slump. I think he's found an absolute like niche within this offense. He has a great relationship with Jordan Love. Clearly Matt LaFleur wants him to have the ball at all times, maybe too often. I have said this for a while and I'm sticking to my guns. I think he is going to be our 1,000-yard receiver. Rushing and receiving, but like 1,000 yards from scrimmage will be Jaden Reed. I think he's going to reach levels of stardom this season that we're going to be. He's going to be the guy. Like he's going to be the guy. I think they're going to have multiple the guys because I have another guy on this list that I'm going to mention. Maybe if you don't take him, but I'm all the way up on our second year receiver.
If we were doing a different episode titled "The All I Take Him for Granted" team, Jaden Reed might have been my number 1 overall pick. I actually did not have him on my list because I think I just take him for granted already. Like I just he's already so ingrained in my mind of he's just a great he's just a really good wide receiver already. Like I don't even the hype is there, yes, but he's just almost out of mind for me because he's that consistent. He just showed the consistency in year 1. I agree with you. I think he has the opportunity to take even a better step in year 2. People have asked me a lot, who's going to be the Packers' leading wide receiver? If you had, that's a tough question with this group of wide receivers. And I've consistently said Jaden Reed. I think he gets the most opportunities. I think he has the most defined role within the slot, but also can do so many things that you ask him to do. He's just that guy already. His stats were already really impressive for a rookie. There's just, you could say so many things and go in so many different directions with Jaden Reed, but like I said, I almost didn't have him on my list just because I already take him for granted for what type of player he already is and has become.
Wasn't even on the list.
I know. I think it's almost 2. Like I said, the hype is already there. I don't even almost see the hype because it's people already are aware. I don't know. I don't even know how to define it, but I think that's where my mind went.
Oh yeah. I hear you. I mean, on my list, when you sent me our topic, I said, okay, Xavier McKinney, Jaden Reed. And then I have to think about it a little bit more because the hype is there. I know that they're going to produce. I trust the production 100%. My next guy was definitely the next 2. So, I obviously can only pick 1, but I feel like the next 2 that I have, they're just so intertwined, which is giving it away. But we just think of them kind of as a package deal, which is fair. But I'm going to go Luke Musgrave. Okay. And I think the hype has to be real for Luke because of what he was able to do in his rookie season. And it's hard to look at his stats and be like, okay. And then you remember he had a lacerated kidney and he still was able to do what he did. I mean, again, his stats don't jump off the page necessarily, he had 34 receptions for 352 yards. Okay. In the postseason, he had 6 receptions for 66 yards and a touchdown, a great touchdown. But there's something about his athleticism and his dynamic. He's so dynamic. I was going to try to make up a word. I don't think it's if he hadn't lost all that time, I fully imagine that development over the second half of his rookie season would have been so astronomical. And I think we're going to end up seeing that over the course of his second year. And I just think like what he is able to do and what Matt LaFleur wants his tight ends to do, which is why I kind of, loop him and Tucker Kraft together. So I'll leave him for you if you want to take him. He's going to be so integral to this offense. I mean, so integral to this offense, right? With his speed, with his size. So I'm all in on having a fully healthy Luke Musgrave for the full season. And mostly just having like that full tandem, the two of them on the field together for the full season.
Well, spoiler alert, you might be able to get the other one with your next pick. But yeah, those two tight ends, I'm all there as well. I think I talked a little bit about Musgrave yesterday and just the ability that he has. Actually, it was a couple of days ago, but to live in the seam, to be somebody that stretches the field, that has a little bit of that gravity to him, that's pulling safeties and defenders his way because they're nervous about him. I think his ability as a red zone threat is just not even scratching the surface of what he's capable of yet. I talked a little bit about Jermichael Finley, where they started utilizing him more as like a big wide receiver on the outside, especially in goal line situations. And he could run a slant, he could run a fade, he could run a back shoulder fade. There's so many different things that you could do with him. Just in like if you're running goal line and just Luke Musgrave goes out wide, who are you putting on that guy? Are you going to put a corner on him? Because all right, we're just going to jump all you to death. All right, are you going to put a safety on him? All right, good, because we're going to fake a fade and we're just going to slant inside, and your safety's probably not going to stick with them. And good luck if you try to put a linebacker out there. So like, there's not a great answer to that, and I think we're only again scratching the surface of what he's capable of. Go ahead.
No, I think a lot about the conversation we have about slot corners and how difficult it is to play in the slot these days, because you are just going up against, like, you're literally going up against Jayden Reeds and Luke Musgraves, right? Like the amount, the diversity in which you have to cover is so difficult, which makes it really hard to evaluate slot corners. And when I think about that, especially when we talk about like Keyshawn and how like unfair I think he gets docs for last season, this is what I think about. I think about, well, like, okay, he has to literally go up against the last guy we just talked about in Jayden Reed, who's this like shifty, speedy, small slot wide receiver. And then he also has to learn how to cover a Luke Musgrave, who's 6'6" and also like not that much slower than a Jayden Reed, by the way, and who can beat you up the seam, who is going to be incredibly difficult to tackle, also much harder, right, than a smaller guy. And your slot corner is probably not really changing unless defenses are going to have to now rotate those guys, because you're putting your 6'6" tight end who can catch passes and also, by the way, block really well in the slot. It's just a mismatch nightmare. Like Luke Musgrave is a mismatched nightmare that I know LaFleur is going to exploit like hell.
And at the end of last season, you know what he learned to do? Musgrave stayed on his feet. Like we had to hear Matt LaFleur say in the post-game presser. So as long as he learns how to do that, cut the stumbling out a little bit. I said the other day, he almost needs to slow down a little bit. And I think that's actually going to speed him up, because I think he just needs to play within himself. And I think we're going to see that in year 2. All right, this is brutal now, because I have a lot of guys left on my list and I could go in a variety of different directions. At number 3, I have to go Jordan Love at this point. I have to go Jordan Love. And the only reason he's not higher on my list is because the hype is, we heard this week from Mike Tannenbaum, former NFL GM, who said if you were to do an NFL draft with all the players, he would take Jordan Love number 2. I've heard multiple big time personalities that have said very clearly he's not only in the MVP conversation, but they believe he will win MVP this upcoming season. Matt Bowen, I don't want to put that in his mouth. I think he actually had the Packers as a Super Bowl winner, but like the hype is overall for this team, like just through the roof. And that is with the team as a whole and with Jordan Love. I've seen MVP conversation. I think it was Mina Kimes when they were doing their quarterback draft, had him number 5 on the QB draft list. The hype is out of this world. So to say he's going to live up to the hype, or like, anywhere in that conversation, is saying a lot. But at this point in the draft, of our all hype team draft, I'm taking Jordan Love. I don't know if he ends up being the second best player in the NFL. I don't know if he ends up being the fifth best quarterback. I don't know if it's slightly above that, slightly below that, somewhere in the range. I don't know. But I am buying Jordan Love. I am buying everything that is being said about him. I am buying his second half of the season. They did it again, Perri. They absolutely did it again. They have their franchise quarterback. He's going to lead them for the foreseeable future. That contract is probably closer to getting done every day that we go along. And I have nothing but positive, super excited things to say about Jordan. His maturity, his composure, his poise. And I can't go back enough to that Dontavian Wicks play against the Dallas Cowboys, where just the overall preparation that entire play takes is unfakeable. It's not a fluke. He shows everything that you need to be a elite star level quarterback. And we saw it not just on that play, but throughout the entire course of even the season. Even when there are times where he struggled earlier, you could see the vision of what he was trying to do, trying to accomplish. It was almost like what we talked about with Musgrave. Like you almost it just needs to just slow down a little bit, but it was getting there, and then it got there, and you saw proof of concept, and you're just like, oh, we've seen this before. We have seen this before, and now it's here, and it's beautiful.
I think Jordan Love's my Jaden Reed for this episode because he wasn't even on my list because it's just
I get it.
It's just like, duh. I don't know. I will say though, not in jest, but like the hype is deserved after what he showed last season. And I'm 100% in lockstep with you. I fully believe I'm in. I am a little bit, there is a very small part of me, very small, that is a little nervous about if he struggles at all, normal struggles, right? Every quarterback has them, right? At any point this season, is it, oh, it was fake. Oh, everyone's going to freak out, right? Because now we've set these, like you've said it, lofty, I mean, astronomical expectations for this guy. Is it going to backfire? Now, backfire means like in a discourse sense, and like that doesn't really matter because I say with utmost confidence, Jordan Love does not give a rat's ass about the discourse. I bet he doesn't even listen to it, doesn't know what anyone is saying. So I'm not worried about his like flappability or anything like that. But I do, like, a small piece of me is like, oh, are they going to get on, like ESPN and be like, we were wrong after like one bad game?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I say to people listening, if that happens, guess what? Guess who also had bad games? Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, all quarterbacks. It's okay. There's going to be growing pains. Now guys have tape on him and defenses are going to come prepared, right? And it's up to Matt LaFleur and Jordan to learn to roll with that. And I think part of this season is going to be us seeing him evolve from last season. Not necessarily get better, but like learn how to evolve when guys know his tells or like know how to counteract some of the things that he can do.
When you say I have the utmost confidence in not only Jordan, but in Matt and in Tom Clements as well, to whatever, because he might get into a situation where, even Aaron had to go back and watch earlier tape of himself because he realized and he caught something with his footwork that wasn't the same. So that like he got into a bad habit with something. Jordan Love is not immune to picking up a bad habit with footwork or an arm angle or something that he might need to get cleaned up. I trust Tom Clements and company, if that happens, to get that cleaned up. He is not immune to, like you said, defenses finding something on him. They didn't last year. They had an answer. They blitzed him a ton. They tried to give him everything they could. They threw the kitchen sink and they had answers for everything. But that doesn't mean that they maybe don't go in an opposite direction or find something that, oh, Jordan struggles with this. And then, but I have faith in both Matt and Jordan to figure out whatever that thing is so that it doesn't become, all right, this one defensive coordinator figured it out, but now it's like a 7-week issue because every defensive coordinator is copying and pasting. No, Matt's too good for that. Matt is literally too good for that to happen. I think Jordan's too good for it too. So I have faith in the plan, the system, and the people around Jordan for whatever happens, whatever gets thrown at them, they're going to find solutions to it. And there's just too much there already where it's like, I'm not saying there can't be hiccups, but it's too good for it to have any sort of long-term significant failure. It's just there's enough there.
I'm 100% with you. 100%. I just thought I'd throw some.
No, I get to what you're saying.
In the mix for podcast purposes.
Oh, just to be clear too, like I guarantee you, I absolutely guarantee you, what happened the last time we saw him? There was an opportunity against the 49ers to drive down the field and go and get the win, and he threw in a brutal interception. If anyone doesn't think that the next time he's in a clutch situation, if he doesn't come through, that the entire narrative and talking point is going to be, oh, he can't come through in the clutch. He's not a clutch player. He's like, I guarantee you that if it happens in the first 5 weeks of the season, then it'll happen immediately. Oh, he's not a clutch guy. It'll that's going to be the talking point. And those things just manifest themselves. Every quarterback is going to have something that they overcome or gets talked about. That hopefully that's not his thing, but if it happens one more time, it's probably going to be his thing, and then he's going to have to overcome it, and he'll be great. He'll be fine.
And to that point, like, again, some of it might actually be warranted. Like, if he can't finish out games in clutch drives, I mean, that's key to winning games. You're not always going to win by 40 points like the Cowboys, right? So, I mean, we're speculating now, but I think this is going to be like, this is just going to be a big year for him. He 100% deserves the contract. He 100% is the franchise quarterback. He's proven, I think, without a shadow of a doubt, that he should and can lead this team for the absolute foreseeable future. Is there still room for development? Yes.
Which is
do I think part. Which is should be very scary for anyone who wants to go up against the Packers. Does he still need to achieve all of that development? Yeah, he does. I have confidence that he's going to, just like based on the guy that he is and the work that he puts in and the coaching staff around him.
Last thing here, to your initial point, the narrative train that happens is a lot of times we lift players up just to tear them down. Like, and if there's any, like, well, yep, he's the second best quarterback, or he's the fifth or second best player, he's the fifth best quarterback, whatever. And then all of a sudden, if there's just a little bit of like, oh, but it's not going as well, we immediately start to pick at their game and tear them down. When that's why my initial point too of like, the reason I didn't have him higher on the list is because the hype is just here. It's like almost like unattainable. So like, I'm still buying, but like that is an aggressive amount of hype for any one player to live up to in his year two as a starter. So
it's really awesome to see though, for a guy who is so like belittled, quite frankly, for so long. Why'd the Packers take him? They have Aaron Rodgers, all this stuff. And it's like, it's a huge flip, right? It's a huge flip, I think, for anyone to try to handle. And again, like, this is such a indictment on who he is and his own like inner self-confidence. If this just like rolls off his back, which it really seems like it does. But to watch it go, like, it's like night and day from like what everyone is saying, which is, I think, why you really, as anyone who plays in this league, but especially a quarterback, like, you really just have to like block it all out.
Agreed. We'll go lightning round through both of our final two picks here. Number 4 on my list, Dontavian Wicks. If anyone didn't think I was going to have Dontavian Wicks in my top 5, you're just out of your mind. I am the leader of the Dontavian Wicks hype train as much as I can possibly be. Justice Mosqueda and I were talking about him. I think even before like he had like his first NFL like we are all on board with Dontavian Wicks. He's a separation sensation. He's only going to get better in year 2. He wasn't number 1 on my list, but he was the first player I wrote down as like, he's going to be on my list. And that's, I can't say enough about what he did as a rookie, as a day 3 selection. It's so crazy where they were able to get him and what he was able to do. Again, the route running ability, the ability at the line of scrimmage to get off releases, or just his release game, at the catch point, great hands, run after the catch was more impressive than I thought he was capable of coming out of college. It's all there, and I'm hoping it's even going to get better in year 2 for Dontavian.
Yeah, he was top 5 for me as well. Just all like, right. Yep.
All right, you got 2 more.
My turn?
Yep,
okay.
Final 2 for you.
Final 2?
Yep.
All right, I guess I already peeped it, but I'm going Tucker Kraft. Once again, like, very similar to Luke Musgrave. I know they're very different tight ends, but I think just like the trajectory that he was clearly on the second half of the season, I'm ready for it to keep on going. If you're not watching the video, I have a line graph that's going upward. The blocking, the catch ability, the run after the catch ability, the way Matt LaFleur wants to use him. Also, I said it out before, but just like to have him and Luke finally on the field together, I think they're going to elevate each other. Their skill sets are complementary. They're going to cause defenses to not know who to turn to. You add in my next guy, who is Christian Watson, the three of them on the field together. It's just going to be so scary. And then you add in Jaden Reed, like, who do you cover? This offense, who do you cover? Andy, I don't know. I when I think about it, like, this exercise has me like, this offense is so terrifying for defenses. They have it all. So I will go to my next guy, Christian Watson. Yeah, I feel like I hype him up a lot on this show. And so I don't know if you're going to hear anything new out of me at the moment, but he is, to me, he is the most well-rounded wide receiver they have on this team. He is the size, he is the speed, he is the athleticism. He is probably has to work on the route tree a little bit. Maybe Dontavian Wicks actually might be the most well-rounded receiver, but in that perspective, but Christian Watson is the guy that when he's on the field, he changes everything. He changes what defenses do. He changes what they call. He changes the entire offense. I don't want to call him a security blanket yet because I don't know if he's played enough with Jordan Love to be one, but like, he will become that. Like, he is going to be at that level where you just get him the ball. It doesn't matter where, when, how, what, in space, you get him the ball. He's going to do something with it. And all we've been waiting for is healthy. And he's healthy, right? And like, healthy with answers, healthy. And I think that should be so freaking scary. Like, I hope, I need everyone to go back and remember how people were talking about him, like draft season, his year, right? Yep. The hype and like the kind of player that everyone was expecting him to be. And he is going to be that guy. He is that guy when he's on the field. He just hasn't been. This season, he will be. He is going to be a game change. Think about all the like those crazy touchdowns that he had. I don't remember. I think it was the Chiefs game, maybe. What was the one he plucked it over the defender's hands? Like, because
I know which one you mean. I can't remember what team was against, but I know exactly which one you mean.
The lead, like, he's all of it. He's all of it. So whole season with him, I don't know what else to say.
He was next on my list. In his last 17 games, he's had his last 17 games that he's played in, he's had 13 touchdowns. Like, he's almost a touchdown a game type of player when he's healthy and he's in there. Like you said, the key word is healthy. But this is nobody's saying Christian is, is bad when he's out there, but he obviously has to stay out there. I believe this is going to be the year where he stays healthy. They've obviously done a lot to try to get him to the level that he can play the entirety, at least the majority of the season. And I'm very hopeful, if nothing else, that this is the year that we get a full Christian Watson experience. And if we do, like you said, it has the ability to take this offense to a level that we haven't seen, in large part due to the fact that he hasn't been on the field the entirety of the time. But when he's out there, it's different, it's tangible, and I can't wait to see it in totality. All right, last one for me, which was going to be Christian Watson. I so want to say Bo Melton because I love me some Bo Melton. I'm actually going Keyshawn Nixon, and I'm going kick returner Keyshawn Nixon here. I believe these new rules are going to change everything from a return standpoint. I think we just got to the point where, like, he kind of won the all-pro kick returner by like default last year because just like nobody was doing it. The 2 years ago, he was very clearly like he made a massive impact. But I thought last year there was a little bit of a step back. I think, again, in large part due to just the way that the return game evolved. And there almost just wasn't the ROI on it with the way that the rules were set up. And there were times where he would be returning from deep in his end zone, not getting it back to the 25, and times where it would actually cost the Packers some yards, understandably, because he's an aggressive style player. Goodbye to all of that. He's going to get a million opportunities to return. He is a big time playmaker. I think his skill set actually fits perfect for this new type of return. And I think he is going to be a legitimate weapon. It's not a mistake that as soon as these rules got passed, I forget who it was, but signed Cordero Patterson like immediately. They're like, yep, we got to get that guy. And other teams have gone out of their way to sign players specifically because of this rule. The Chiefs are talking about using a safety as their kicker because of this rule. Like, it is going to change the game. It is going to set teams up with great field position. And maybe even if Keyshawn gets to the point where like we can't kick to this guy anymore, the Packers are getting the ball at the 30-yard line every time because teams are kicking it out of the end zone to avoid Keyshawn Nixon. Like that is a big advantage in and of itself. He's going to be a game changer. He's going to be a weapon. He's going to be a playmaker. And I'm buying Keyshawn Nixon in this special teams.
100%. They already had an all-pro. I can't imagine how much better he's going to be with the new rules.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Quickly, just a few honorable mentions on my list that we didn't get to. Bo Melton, Javon Bullard, Marshawn Lloyd, and Carl Brooks were all players that I also had as honorable mentions for buying the hype. Anyone else that you had on your list that we didn't get to?
Yeah, I had Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah, both good choices as well. I think we can both agree that we're very confident in all the players that we just mentioned. Last but not least, just really quick, a player that maybe is getting some level of hype or excitement that you're maybe doesn't necessarily have to be negative, but you just maybe want to take a wait and see approach, or whatever angle you want to take on this. Maybe you're not quite there yet.
Okay, I have a hard time with this one. I actually had two answers that come to mind, and I can't tell if I want to take the cop out or the actual answer, but maybe I'll do an actual answer. So my answer to this is more of like I'm just hesitant. I'm still hype about the player. I still very much am rooting for their success. I want them to be everything. I'm nervous, and it's Eric Stokes. And look, everyone is very hype about him in camp. He looks great, et cetera, et cetera. It's all the things you want to hear. You don't want him to come back to camp and then the third year in a row have everyone be like about Eric Stokes, right? This is all the things you want to hear. So yes, it's very hype worthy, but the pads haven't come on yet, right? We're 2 practices in. He had a terrible injury.
Yeah.
A double, like an ankle knee gruesome injury. I think we just have to temper expectations, because similarly kind of to what we were just talking about Jordan Love, in like the same vein, obviously very different, but just like don't overhype a player then just to tear him down when he doesn't get to your expectations, right? Like just remember what Eric Stokes has been through, root for his success, level set expectations accordingly for a player who is coming back from a really terrible injury. I hope to be very pleasantly surprised when he is back as a starter. I just don't know yet.
We had the same answer. So I don't need to even go too much over what you said. You said it perfectly. I think the thing that gives me a lot of hope and confidence is the fact that so far in 2 OTA practices, he's been the guy opposite Jaire. And it's not like there's not a player who could potentially do that. And they have Carrington Valentine, who they've been extremely complimentary towards. So the fact that Eric in 2 practices so far is just that guy across from Jaire gives me confidence. Now, Matt also said this is the best Eric's ever looked, both physically and mentally. Like those are high praise. I've also heard that Josh Myers is playing the best football of his career. So I'm like you. I'm hopeful. I'm excited. I so want just even rookie level Eric Stokes to come back, and that is such a value add to this team if you get that. But I'm willing to take more of, like you said, a wait and see. I'm not quite there with the hype yet, but I'm hopeful, especially the way that the Packers have been talking about him and have been utilizing him in practice so far. Here are our final teams: Perry Goldstein, Xavier McKinney, Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, and Christian Watson. Very smart of you, by the way, to go very weapon heavy. You could have easily made like an all hype team just for wide receivers and tight ends, just made it out of that entire group, and you would have had an amazing list. So you got 4 of those guys plus Xavier McKinney, who I think is a very unbelievable choice there. I've got Devontae Wyatt, Jaire Alexander, Jordan Love, Dontavian Wicks, and Keyshawn Nixon, the kick returner, with these new kick return rules. So everyone,
you're the QB, so you get like plus 10.
I do get literally. I do get plus 10. But no, everyone in the comments, make sure to mention who you thought had a better all hype team draft, Perri or myself, and put your list of 5 of who you think are going to be the all hype team candidates for 2024. Final thoughts. That I never in a million, I say this I never in a million years would have thought we would have went 54 minutes on this topic, but I think that just in a nutshell shows you how excited we are about some of these players on this team going into 2024 and what we think they can accomplish. But Perri, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
So I think these topics are tough because we're obviously fans, right? But I think you and I do our very best to be like objective about this team. Like, I am not afraid to say this player played terribly, and you are not afraid to give a bad grade, right? Like, I really do try to go into everything, especially this far removed from like actual game time, being like highly objective about the way this roster is constructed and like the way that I feel like this team is going into the season. And so in doing this exercise, this team is going to be really good.
Yeah.
It's just like objectively, like genuinely objectively, this team is going to be very good. I think there are a few scenarios we could maybe in a later episode talk about if we really want to, if we're like strapped for topics, get into where they might not be, right? There's certainly possibilities of that, of course. But it's hard not to be very hype. We could have talked about probably 15 other players who deserve to be on this list, just with the development of this young roster, with some of the other free agents that we didn't get into. Josh Jacobs was on my list, as I said. Like, there is a roster chock full of very talented players on this team who, if they come together in the way that the coaching staff and the front office think that they will, and we think that they will, this is going to be a very, very, very good team. So again, I think that people listening, like, it's can come off as a very like Homer like episode, and I want everyone to know that like we really do our best to actually like kind of take like a more like 1,000-foot view look.
Big time.
And this obviously was a very positive episode because we're hyping up players, but we wanted to take a look at players who like we think genuinely actually deserve that hype because of, you know, real justifications. And there are certainly players who are not going to live up to the hype. It'll happen. We'll be disappointed in it. That's always going to happen. We'll talk about it over the course of the season when we see it on the field. But it's hard not to look at this team and be like, whoa, yeah, this team's going to be really good.
Outside of the 10 players that we drafted, outside of another like 7 or 8 that we mentioned in honorable mentions, we didn't even talk about Zach Tom, Rashawn Gary, Romeo Dobbs, Elton Jenkins, Preston Smith, LVN, Edgerrin Cooper, Quay Walker, Kenny Clark. Like, there's a whole group of amazing, talented players on this team that didn't even make like, or we didn't even discuss on today's episode, which again, just goes to show you how deep and talented this football team really, really is, which should make for an incredible, hopefully a very incredible year. Perri, where can we find all of your amazing work, and tell us all about Packs What She Said?
Yeah, just really quick, you can follow me on Twitter, Perri_Goldstein. Follow the podcast that I'm on other than Pack a Day at Packs What She Said, PWSS podcast with Maggie Loney. We're going to have some guests coming on soon. And starting at the start of training camp, we will be officially back with She Said TV.
That is amazing, amazing news. Totally off topic, but got to give a huge shout out to the 2014 Wisconsin United FC Howard 2014 boys team, who is now 11-0 on the season and just went down to the Cranberry Clash and picked up the first place championship this weekend. So shout out to those kids who are doing an absolutely amazing job. Hopefully the Packers can follow in their footsteps and bring home a championship trophy. But shout out to them. Perri, you are absolutely amazing. Make sure to follow her on Twitter. And of course, follow Packs What She Said as well. You can find me at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. That is going to do it for us today. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.